Well, Tesla CEO and former allied US President Donald Trump, Elon Musk, has announced plans to create a new political party, describing America as one-party system and saying his America Party would give the US back its freedom. President Trump criticized the move, describing Musk as a train wreck, and said the party's creation would lead to disruption and chaos. A quick look at Tesla stock and pre-market and the Frankfurt listing today. The early signals are weaker, seen down 3%. And this is something we've seen in recent weeks and months, that the more political that Musk becomes, the bigger the hit to the stock price. And the only bounces we've seen recently have really been about the prospect of Musk doubling down and focusing on Tesla, but stepping away from being too political. So you can see the links here. In terms of what it means if there's a third party, well, typically if you go over history in other nations, a third party doesn't usually work for the two other major parties. It does lead to some sort of destruction in the numbers. It doesn't work for the third party itself. Sometimes, sometimes not. And if you look at the polling that we have so far, Qantas Insights has put together some numbers saying, look, 40% of Americans say that they could back this party. And if you break that down further, 14% are very likely to support Musk's new party, 26% somewhat likely, and you had a little bit of fence sitting, 22% sitting on the fence saying unsure. So there is potential for this to be disruptive to US politics. Absolutely.
And it's the disruption rather than the realistic hope of being elected, which is the key here as well. I straight away started thinking back at Ross Perot, who ran as an independent in 92 and 96. And 92 was the most interesting election, though, because he was in, he pulled out, he went back in again as well. And that was the George W. Bush versus Bill Clinton. Now, he ran on the premise of a balanced budget. He didn't like NAFTA, so very interesting. He didn't like the outsourcing of American jobs as well. But the key point here is where he took the votes from as well. And he took, and I was just checking the numbers on this, 19.7 million electoral votes, which, as we know, given how tight the last few elections have been, that is definitely enough to swing it either way. That was 18.9% share of the vote. Now, he didn't win any electoral votes in the end. He didn't win any seats throughout the country or electoral college votes throughout the country. But what's really fascinating is the disruption that had for the other two parties as well. So that's that one angle as well. So it's not that they realistically expect to get in, it's the disruption that it can create as well for the existing parties.
And disruption in swing states in particular with the US.
And in this case, just bringing it forward to Elon Musk, let's be brutally honest about it. There are not many Democrats who are going to be voting for Elon Musk at the moment as well. So if you look at where he's going to get his votes from, it would appear to be disgruntled Republicans. That, of course, would be very disruptive for the MAGA movement and for the Trump vision of the Republican Party.
I think that's a really important point. Where would he be pulling votes from? And I think Karen made this point last week, and I was watching from the comfort of my bed as I was sitting sick. But you made a really interesting point, I think pulled from a Wall Street Journal analysis showing how the Republican Party has evolved in recent years and now comes to represent a group of people largely in the middle of America, largely at the at a lower income level than the dense coastal cities that
the parties have flipped.
The parties have flipped, exactly. And now the Democrats tend to represent these dense coastal cities where people are in service-related jobs and not the center of America where jobs are much more manufacturing-related. And we know the backlash has been huge against Elon Musk from the coast, which used to be, the ultimate Tesla buyers. That's a totally different narrative now. Those are the people who are dumping their Tesla cars. So in effect, this could be a boon to the Democrats, to your point, Steve, that if we see this third party come into the picture, who are they going to be pulling votes from? Potentially the Republicans, which could be a boon to the Democrats. And I don't know if that's Musk's necessarily his goal.
Can I add a time frame here? Because don't forget, we are counting down to the midterms. So if Musk was energized and moved quickly, and this is a man who does not sit on his hands. He's already had the feelers out there in the sense of how these parties play out in Europe and other places. If he moved quickly, this could be disruptive even for the midterms, you would think, in terms of whether he could actually get something going. And that would frustrate the rest of Trump's signature bills for the remainder of his legacy. So I think that is quite key. Would it also frustrate any political dynasty ambitions? We know that the Trump family have signaled that they could be interested in trying to extend out some sort of Trump legacy. So that's where it could also be somewhat disruptive down the track.
Two other points. I hate to point out to Elon Musk, and you can't obviously point out things to people who think they're quite omnipotent, he's not got the best electoral record as of late as well. And I'll just go back to something else that happened on April 2nd. It wasn't just the fact that we had the Trump announcement. We also had the Wisconsin voters backing a Democrat-backed judge, despite the fact that Elon Musk spent enormous millions and millions and millions of dollars trying to get a Republican onto the state Supreme Court as well. So,
that's right.
The backlash when he gets into politics comes from many areas as well. The other point, I'm just changing the subject back to Tesla. What happened? Where was the bit where he said, I'm going to work 24/7. I'm giving up on politics. I'm stepping back from politics. I'm stepping back from Doge. I'm going to work 24/7. I'm going to sleep on my camp bed on the production floor in Austin or wherever it is to work on Tesla. Tesla. Obviously SpaceX and the other operations as well. That was only a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
and now all of a sudden he's back in politics?
So he's going to sleep on the campaign trail now, is the suggestion. So
for Tesla shareholders, they must be thinking, Elon, knock it off. Just concentrate on your day job, mate.
This is exactly the opposite of what Tesla shareholders want. And you got Dan Ives, I think the ultimate bull on Tesla, coming out here saying, I have to admit...
Not Cathie Wood?
Well, she's competition with Cathie Wood, I think. He's not an investor, though.
No, for sure.
So, she probably takes the cake as the most bullish investor and him as the most bullish analyst. But he came out and said, this is the antithesis of what Tesla shareholders want. It's exactly the opposite. They're already exhausted with Elon Musk's political involvement.
If you politicize the cars, it is going to alienate a lot of people.
Can I just go back to where all this started? The trigger point here was around the extra spending, because Elon Musk had put his name on the line here, and Tesla's name too, with the commitment to Doge, stripping out some of the excess and creating some sort of government efficiency. All that, he feels like it's been a complete waste of time now that we've added to the debt pile with the BBB, and we're talking about an extra $5 trillion in the debt load. So he felt as though that was a complete waste of his efforts. The other point, and this was arguably the element that put a rocket under the attacks, was the removal of his ally Jared Isaacman as the NASA administrator, the name that was initially volunteered by Trump then pulled. And clearly Musk wanted to have an ally in the space race, and Trump did not allow that, saying effectively he thought it would be inappropriate to have a close friend of Elon who was in the space business. Good to hear that Trump actually has some boundaries when it comes to friends and doing business.
He does have boundaries.
Well, that was the suggestion that came forward, the reason that name was not pushed
interesting reports on what the family is and how the family is, using links to do very well around the world.
I think coming back to...
Legally, by the way.
Yeah. I think coming back to Tesla and the share price story, Tesla's share price has plunged and Tesla's market share has plunged, partly because of what Elon Musk is doing, but partly because of what the other car makers have been doing. And just anecdotally, when we were in France this weekend, we rented an electric vehicle, not a Tesla. And it's amazing how much they have come on in the last few years.
Was it European or Asian?
It was European.
Oh, yeah, good.
It was European, and it was an unremarkable EV.
Peugeot or Renault?
It was a Renault.
Yeah. The hire companies have a lot of Renaults.
It's
exactly. Really into the fleet.
But the charging infrastructure has come on so much in the last 5 years.
No range anxiety?
No range. We did have a little bit of range anxiety, so we upgraded at the counter because we were told we were a little too ambitious.
What did you upgrade?
So the initial car, we were being frugal, had 180 kilometer range, and the upgraded one was 300, and we had 160 kilometers to go.
You slap on that aircon, it soon goes down.
Oh yeah, we had a few panic moments, but we made it back.
That's not the way to drive, is it? I mean,
we were living on the edge.
I agree, because I've just made the same decision over the weekend, and I went for a very traditional version because I didn't want to be stuck somewhere.
Yeah, but because the cars themselves have come on a lot, you have so much transparency about how much of the battery you're using, and it's so easy to find charging stations now, depending on where you are. But while Tesla has been grappling with an Elon Musk that's incredibly distracted, other car companies have been forging ahead, and I think that's a factor here as well when we talk about Elon Musk's future ambitions.